Good morning and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, to another analysis and breakdown of the Quran of the Muslims. Yes, we're back once again to break this thing down verse by verse into factual logical statements in English so that you and I can understand who or what is Allah, what does he mean by the contents of his book here, and more importantly for us as non-believers, how does this affect us in our lives today? So as I always do before I start, I'm going to ask you now if you have any doubts or questions as to my factual accuracy with the statements I'm going to make. Please first buy and read one of these, a Tajweed Quran with the meanings translated into English. And after having read this, you will understand everything I'm going to say to you now is 100% true and accurate of the words of Allah and what Muslims believe today. Despite their denials and protestations, if they call themselves Muslim, 100% of this is what they believe in their hearts and what informs their actions in life. So with that in mind, let's carry on where we left off. We were up to 102 or 103 last time, and we were just about finished moaning about, well, Allah was just about finished moaning about Moses, saying how evil the Jews were, the Jews are the evil ones. And the reason they're the evil ones is because they're doing so well over there in Israel. They've got loads of food and money and they're at peace. How dare they do this whilst also not worshipping Allah? Very bad, naughty, nasty, evil Jews. We have to go and kill them. That was Allah's message to his Muslims. Meanwhile, though, the Muslims are not very happy about their own situation, having just lost all their slaves, their entire army, and now being plunged into the depths of poverty with only Allah to keep them company while they starve. So that didn't help matters between them and the now rich, well-fed Jews over there in Israel. So with that in mind, let's carry on where we left off last time. Page number 16, and we are on verse 102. Now I'm going to warn you, 102 is a very long verse, and like we have seen in the past, I think the reason, daily Corvid opinion here, this is not in the scripture, the reason it's a long verse is because it's like 3 different versions of this verse all put together. So it contains elements of 3 different translations, and then on top of that has been novelised, romanticised to make it less racist sounding. But you can be the judge of that when we read the verse. So let's begin. 102. They followed what the evil ones gave out against the power of Solomon. The evil ones means Jews. So what it's saying is those other Jews, the ones we mentioned in the last episode who we don't hate quite as much, the ones we're going to convert back to being our slaves, they followed what the evil ones, Moses and his Jews as the evil ones, they, the Jews, followed Moses and his guys, what they gave out against the power of Solomon. So Solomon was a highly respected and a very powerful king, the king of Israel at this time. And had they directly written a scripture which made Solomon a bad guy, he probably would have sent his very powerful army over and absolutely wiped the floor with these guys. So they were very smart in saying, we hate the Jews, but not Solomon. Solomon's good. That's why they've done that. The blasphemers were not Solomon, but the evil ones, the Jews, teaching men magic and such things as came down at Babylon from the angels Harut and Marut. Now, who in the blinking hell is Harut and Marut? Well, what we know, obviously Allah is not very good at giving us his information, but we'll find out later in this book if it's anything like the other 7 Qurans that we have gone through. Harut and Marut are 2 rebellious demons who are also Muslims working for Allah. So Allah sends Harut and Marut into Israel to settle there pretending to be Jews, and they teach the Jews magic, jewellery working, drugs and prostitution, all the things that in the Old Testament, and actually in the book of Enoch, the demons who are with Satan, the rebellious angels who become the fallen angels or demons of this earth, they are the ones who teach this stuff in the Old Testament, and they are hated. But in the Quran, they are working for Allah, they are Muslims, they have submitted to Allah. So all the evil stuff they're doing, it's actually on command of Allah. So they're like Allah soldier demons. So, they followed what the evil ones gave out against the power of Solomon. Not blasphemers to Solomon. Solomon's not a blasphemer, but the evil ones are, the Jews, teaching men magic as things that came down from Harut and Marut in the time of Babylon. But neither of these taught anyone without saying, "We are only for trial," so that they do not blaspheme. They learned from them the means to sow discord between man and wife. That's the Harut and Marut voice, by the way. So, Harut and Marut have turned up in Israel. They're teaching the evil ones, the Jews, all these nasty things. But we hate the Jews because the Jews are now teaching other people what Harut and Marut have taught them. So they don't hate Harut and Marut, weirdly enough, even though Harut and Marut are, in this story at least, the source of the evil teachings. Well, Allah's actually the source of the evil teachings because it says they can't teach anything Allah didn't teach them first, and they have Allah's permission to go and do it, so they're working for him. And it's only done as a trial. So Allah has sent Harut and Marut to Israel to put the Jews on trial. If they accept the teachings of Harut and Marut, therefore they are infidels and we should kill them. That's really what this is saying. But Harut and Marut don't have any responsibility because in the Quranic morality, demons don't have free will. So even though they're demons, they're evil, they're bad, they're working for Allah. You know, they're like demon robots of Allah, if you like, teaching the magical secrets to the Jews in order to make the Jews falter because they didn't want to worship Allah and be slaves in Egypt. So it's still that same grudge. So we carry on. But they could not harm anyone except through Allah's permission. And they learned what harmed them, not what profited them. And they knew that the buyers of such magic will have no share in happiness in the hereafter. And vile was the price of which they did sell their souls, if only they knew. End of verse. So, very long verse there. It's like 3/4 of this whole page is just that one verse. But if we break it down, this is a new narrative. So even though we're still talking about the Jews and Moses guys I mentioned right at the beginning, we've moved on now. So this is a new subject. We're no longer talking about Moses and his original Jews. We've now gone forward in time. We're talking about later Jews under King Solomon. That's how you know that, because King Solomon wasn't alive when Moses was alive. In fact, Moses had a son who had a son who had a son who married a daughter of someone else who had a son. That son is Solomon. So we're 6 generations, 250, 300 years ahead of Moses. That's what the timing of this should be. So, they followed what the evil ones gave out, which means the Jews now followed what Moses and his evil Jews gave out. So they're still doing the same Torah. They're still worshipping Yahweh. They're still following the Torah. They're still upholding Mosaic law, the 10 Commandments. And even though we're, 350 years in the future, nothing has changed in Israel. They are still upholding those same commandments, Mosaic law, and the things that Moses set forth. King Solomon is the one who is administrating this, being that he's the king now, and he's big, powerful guys, like the most rich. This isn't in the Quran. This is extra historical information for you. You can check. At the time, Solomon was regarded worldwide because Israel had gone from a small couple of tents in the desert to a well-rounded, well-defended city to the most rich and powerful nation in that part of the world. In fact, they built the first temple to solidify their worship of the God who had led them there to those riches. And the first temple was in part built by Solomon's massive wealth. He was the rich guy in the world. Even richer than previous Egyptian kings, richer than anyone. It was well known. Solomon, the reason he was so powerful is because everybody wanted to be his ally. Even kingdoms of Muslims which hated him were scared of his power, so they were allied with him while he was alive, and they paid him a tribute in order that they didn't have to stop doing the Islamic thing. So he collected all this money, and he spent almost all of it on building that first temple to Yahweh. The first temple period, that's what that's called, when Israel was first settled. Before that, it was a desert, it's completely empty. So that's where we are. And that's why it says the evil ones followed that and gave it out, but not Solomon. Solomon's absolved of any sin here. In fact, we like Solomon, is what the Muslims are saying. But the evil ones, those evil Jews, they're the ones teaching men magic and the things that came down from Harut and Marut, these two Allah demons. So Solomon's okay, even though it's his kingdom and it's his rules and he's the one enforcing it with his money and power. Harut and Marut are the one teaching the evil secrets, but they're working for Allah, so they're absolved. So everyone gets an excuse in this story, so they're good. But guess who doesn't get an excuse? The evil, nasty, naughty Jews that we're going to kill. We hate those guys. Remember, Allah said earlier, we're going to kill those guys. We need to go through the door of holy honour, and that means righteous killing of Jews. Just not Solomon, because he might win. That's what this means. And then it finishes up by saying, they learned from them the means to sow discord between man and wife. Man and wife. That's interesting, isn't it? Because we know that Islam doesn't have man and wife. Islam has man and wives. So here is another example. This is mistake 23 now, in 16 pages, where this book directly rips off an earlier scripture, the Holy Bible, by saying man and wife as a phrase within a parable about demon teachings. And we know that the book of Enoch's the same. The fallen angels, Satan's demons, come down to earth and they beset upon the daughters of man by teaching them drug taking, prostitution, jewellery, putting jewellery in your ears and, you know, having tattoos and stuff to beautify and sexualise your children and your bodies. And that's called magic in the Old Testament. That's what magic is. It isn't like, ooh, pulling a rabbit out of a hat and casting fireballs. But not here. Here, Harut and Marut are physically teaching magic. So things like, you know, casting fireballs or making things appear and disappear, making someone live forever, these kind of things are what are written into the hadiths as the teachings of Harut and Marut, which Allah has taught him how to do, or taught them how to do. So keep in mind, actually, later in this book, that will be disagreed with by Allah, but Allah is admitting here he has sent Harut and Marut to attack the Jews as a spy because they've settled there as normal guys. The magic they are teaching the Jews is the reason the Jews are now again being punished by Allah and they've fallen foul of his wrath. But Harut and Marut are getting away with it, and so is King Solomon. And the particular types of magic which he is teaching them is how to raise people from the dead, keep them alive forever, give them magical abilities which only God and his angels should ever have. So later on in the book we're going to get to the part where Allah says anyone who can do that is evil and the person who taught them it is evil. And then he's going to say he is evil because obviously he taught Harut and Marut and they taught the Jews. So the Jews are taught by Harut and Marut who are evil for doing that. They learned from Allah, so he must be evil if he's teaching them evil secrets and the Jews are going to be damned. And that means his guidance is not true and sure and without doubt and will not lead you to good things. Because his guidance through Harut and Marut is leading the Jews to being hated by Muslims. So that's what that means. Then the most interesting part of this very long drawn out verse. But they could not harm anyone except by Allah's permission. So that says to me, anyone who is harmed in any way in the world is only getting harmed by Allah's permission. So what that means is, considering they think Allah is God who creates and controls everything, even though he said everything's predetermined and there's no free will, Allah gives permission. Now, why would you give permission if everything was predetermined, there was no free will? You wouldn't, would you? Permission means, oh, go on then, I'll allow you to do that. And you can either do it with permission, you can rebel and not do the thing you've been permitted to do, or you can do it anyway without permission. Thusly, you are going against the predeterminism of Islam and you are showing that Allah does not take away people's free will. He just says everything is his will in order that he can prop up this false claim that he mind controls. Woo, you know, Allah disease mind controls people and everything that happens is his plan. And then the last bit of the verse is rounded out by saying, they knew that the buyers of such magic would have no share of happiness in the hereafter. So anyone who speaks to Harut and Marut in Israel, i.e. the Jews, are not going to go to the hereafter. They're going to go to hellfire and burn forever. And vile was the price which they did sell their souls. So that's interesting, isn't it? In the last 2 pages ago, 3 pages ago, Allah was saying the Jews have already sold their souls for the price of the hereafter. That's how they're rich. So they can't sell them twice to Harut and Marut. But now he's saying they have sold them twice. So either Allah thinks Jews have 2 sets of souls, or they think that they can buy and sell things which don't belong to them. That's an interesting quandary, because when you think about it, if Allah is saying everybody who is Jewish has 2 souls, he's only said he is in control of one of them. So who controls the other soul that they are buying and selling now, considering the other one already belongs to Allah, according to the Quran? Maybe he's referring to their actual souls, which are the property of them, through God's grace, because God doesn't own their souls. God gave them a soul so that they could live and breathe and have free will. So this is mistake 24. 24 mistakes in 16 pages, and we know it's not perfectly preserved from Humble Servant's video and my own video earlier on yesterday. And this is further proof that that is the case. So that's what that means. And then the final thing is, oh, if only they knew. You know, Allah is saying, if only these guys knew we were going to slaughter them all later, then they would definitely be slaves in Egypt and worship only Allah. But they're dumb, stupid, naughty, evil, filthy ape Jews, and we hate them because they're doing really well over there and they're not scared to Harrot and Marrot and they're learning all these bad things that I wanted to teach them, says Allah. So even though they're doing exactly what I planned for them, says Allah, they're damned to hell anyway, and I'm getting angry of watching it. Delusional psychopath Allah has actually dropped a clanger here, because this completely destroys his earlier notion that he controls all things, has power over all things, and that life is predetermined. Sorry Muslims, you do have free will, but you are choosing to slave away for this demon and not enjoy the fullness of your being, and then be damned to hell at the end of it. So maybe you should actually not be doing that, and you should be an atheist and then try and seek the truth from that position, rather than being a slave on the end of a chain, a barking dog of Allah. And that's the end of that verse. So we move on to 103. 103. If they had kept their faith and guarded themselves from that evil, far better had been their reward from Allah, if but they only knew. He loves doing that, doesn't he? At the end of the last two verses, if they only knew, and they don't know. So he's kind of mournfully saying, those Jews over there, they're going to get killed by me and my Muslims. If only they recognised that in future we were going to kill them and bomb them all, and rape all their daughters and slaughter them in their own homes, then they'd want to be slaves, and they would come and submit to Allah like everyone else has to do. That's interesting, isn't it? So if we break this down, if they had kept their faith and guarded themselves from evil, far better had been the reward from Allah. If they had kept their faith, i.e. if they had thrown away their faith when they were captured as slaves in Egypt and started being Islamic, because remember, in Allah's own words, they already had a God and a faith when they were arrived in Egypt and then were taken as slaves. And the reason why Allah slew them with lightning bolts while they were slaves along with Moses and then raised them up from the dead is because they refused to take his faith on. That's the reason he killed them all. And then even after they had been killed and returned to life, raised from the dead by Allah, they still refused to take his faith on. They would never submit to him, no matter what he did. He could even kill them, raise them back from the dead. They were having none of it. And then they escaped to set up Israel, and they immediately started worshipping Yahweh. So it's interesting, he says, if they had kept their faith, because as far as we can see Allah, mistake number 25, the Jews have kept their faith, despite you taking them prisoner, making them slaves, punishing them for not being the same as you, despite killing them, bringing them back to life, chasing them out of Egypt, sending your Egyptian army after them, who then got killed, then threatening to blow up their whole town and kill every one of them in a prophecy in future, then sending Harut and Marut, the demon, to teach them magic. Despite all of this, they have kept their faith. They're the most faithful people in this book so far. Your Muslims aren't faithful like that, are they? You have to enslave your Muslims. They have no choice in the matter. Jews choose to worship Yahweh and choose to do the Torah stuff. Nobody's going to kill them if they don't. They are choosing it. That's what a covenant means, Allah, just in case you didn't know. And that is why your covenant is meaningless and worthless to anyone who knows what a covenant actually is. Because although Allah claims to have covenanted all his Muslims, on page 1 he says, you are my slaves. Slaves don't have a covenant, they have a chain around their necks. And they are killed if they don't have that covenant. So it is not through free will choice, and that is why Allah has determinism and the rest of the world does not. That's what that means. Oh, if only they had known. Yeah, well, we know why he's saying that. He's trying to impress on his Muslims. These guys just will not learn. They are too foolish and dumb and filthy ape evil Jews stupid. And if only they weren't that stupid and they were worshipping Allah and being our slaves, then we wouldn't have to kill them in future. But unfortunately, says Allah, we're going to have to kill them all, Muslims. That's what this means. Very sinister passage. Then we move on to the last two verses. So, let's just get through these and then we'll summarise at the end. So, 104. O ye of faith! Different to the other Qur'ans. In the other Qurans it says, O ye Muslims, will you? In this one it says, O ye of faith. So once again, this is the fourth time we've seen this. The writer of this Quran, claiming to be Allah, has changed the original manuscript, which says, O ye Muslims, go against the Jews over there. Now it's saying, O ye of faith. So it's also talking to Jews and Christians, Sabbatians, or, you know, whoever else, Samaritans, anyone else, to try and compel them over to Allah. This is a conversion brainwashing version, that means, because it is not speaking to Muslims like the original one did. So, O ye of faith, say not words of ambiguous import, but words of respect, and hearken to Allah. To those without faith is a grievous punishment. End of verse. So there's not much meaning in this one, I've got to say, but we'll go through it. O ye of faith, say not words of ambiguous import, but words of respect. To Allah is the bit they've taken out. In all the other Qurans it says, when you are talking about the Quran or Allah or Mohammed, don't you dare say ambiguous words of import, but only say words of respect when you're talking about Islam. But in this one, they've taken out the Islam bit. Now you're just being told generally don't say ambiguous words of import, i.e. don't speak about other religions, and be respectful when you speak. Although it does say, and hearken to him. So they are kind of inferring that that is going to be done in the service of Allah, even though it's O ye men of faith. Then they finish off by saying, to those without faith is a grievous punishment. Now we're back to the script. This is what we know and love about Allah. He cannot get through a nice sentence without gritting his teeth and growling at the Jews at the end of it. So, to those without faith, i.e. those Jews over there, but not Solomon, because we're scared of him, we're not going to include him in this, and not Moses, because we're claiming that he's an Islamic prophet. So just the Jews, basically. That's how you know it does agree with the other 7 Qurans, just in a roundabout way. A grievous punishment will be on them to those without faith. The grievous punishment he is talking about is being marauded and slaughtered in their own homes by Muslims and then burnt to death after they've died once in the latter end when the judgment day arrives. So they get killed once by Muslims, raised from the dead, killed again by Allah, then they get sent to burn forever in the evil fire. That's the grievous punishment which he repeatedly puts only on the Jews, not on Solomon, not on Harut Marut, not on any bad Muslims, not on anyone else, because they're all going to end up worshipping Allah, is the between the lines bit, but the Jews will never. That's what this is saying. This is in a roundabout way of saying those Jews over there, not Solomon because we're scared of him, but the Jews will never submit to Allah. That's the real reason why I keep telling you they're evil, greedy, sinful, nasty, dumb, foolish, without wisdom, deaf, dumb and blind and diseased. Because whatever I do, they will never submit to Allah. And we know this because he even said he killed them dead while they were slaves and had no weapons, raised them up from the dead, and he was right there in their face to say, now do you want to be Muslims, guys? I've demonstrated that I can kill you like that. And they went, nah, we're okay, Allah. We're going to go set up Israel now and worship our God. That's what this means. And we reach the final verse of the day, 105. It is never the wish of those without faith amongst the people of the book, nor of the pagans, that anything good should come down to you from your Lord. But Allah will choose for his special mercy whom he will, for Allah is the Lord of grace abounding. End of verse, end of reading. So, there are 2 mistakes actually in the translation here, where there should be a space between will and for, but it says will for as if it's one word. And then at the end, when it says grace abounding, there's a space before the full stop. So even though you can't really, it doesn't change the reading of it, it's another 2 mistakes. So how many are we at? 25, 26, 27 mistakes so far in 16 pages, plus 5 lies. But it's perfectly preserved, is what they tell us. So we know it is not perfectly preserved, and they are lying every time they say that. So, let's go through the verse. It is never the wish of those without faith amongst people of the book. People of the book is Jews and Christians. So even though we're in the time of Solomon, we're not at Jesus yet. Jesus hasn't been born yet. This is being written after Jesus has been born. So we know the people of the book is Jews and Christians. That's why they're not just saying the evil ones. Yet another mistake. That's 28 mistakes because he has plotted himself in the time of the book of Daniel after Jesus has been alive. But he's talking about Solomon's Jews as being evil, as if they're right over there. Solomon's Jews were dead by the time of Jesus. Everyone knows that. Apart from Allah. So, It's never the wish of those people of the book, nor the pagans, which is presumably Hindus and, other people who have different gods, that anything good should come down to you from your Lord. So what Allah is saying to his Muslims is those guys over there, Christians, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, all these other guys, they never wish anything good for you Muslims. No, they really hate you. They actually want to kill you. And that's because of their Lord. Their lords are evil. All their lords are evil. The only good Lord is Allah, and it's obviously the only good Lord because he's the one who's enslaved you, O Muslims, who will kill you if you don't submit. That's what this means. And it's just worth keeping an eye on these things. So that is the third time where Allah has blown his own trumpet to the Muslims by saying, other lords are all evil. I am the good Lord, says Allah to his Muslims. And the reason you know that I am the only good Lord, O Muslims, is because I'll kill you if you disagree. It's the third time he's done that in 16 pages. So every 7 or so pages, we're going to get that. That's the average rate of Allah threatening to kill his Muslims if they don't worship him. 7 pages, 1. 14 pages, another. 16 pages, now we got another one. I suppose it's 6, 3, 6, 12. Yeah, so let's say 5.5 pages. And then he finishes off the verse by saying, but Allah will choose for his special mercy whom he will, for Allah is the Lord of grace abounding. So he's saying no one else is going to get chosen for this grace abounding, this special favour that they're going to get. Only you Muslims are going to get it, even though I just threatened to kill you a minute ago if you don't worship me. At least you're going to get this grace abounding reward at the end of your days, but only if you kill the Jews, because remember, the door of holy honour is only open to people who martyr themselves and have killed Jews. That's what this means. And that's the end of our reading. So, in summary of that page, I think we can see what's happening here. Now that Allah has said to the Muslims, Moses is Jewish and therefore is bad because he didn't want to stay as a slave in Egypt, and his Jews were evil. We thought we were going to kill them straight away, but they actually proliferated. Now they're really rich. They've even got this King Solomon guy who's like famous and wealthy and powerful. We're terrified of him. So we can't be rude about Solomon, but we're going to be rude about his Jews. We're going to say Solomon's good, but these guys, they don't listen to Solomon. Even though he's sent them demons and they're quite happy to listen to Harut and Marut the demons. And the thing you've got to keep in mind about that is Solomon was extremely classical about his interpretation of Mosaic law. Solomon would not have put up with any worshipping of Allah or performance of magic in his Israel. In fact, he didn't. That's why he built the first temple to Yahweh, because he was so convinced by the blessings that he was given that Yahweh was the true God and he was a chosen king of Yahweh, that he built that first temple, which at the time was a wonder of the world. It was like the pyramids. It was the most amazing building ever made at that time. And the reason he did that is because he had faith, even though Allah says these guys have no faith. He had great faith. And they didn't lose their faith because they built this huge temple so it was big enough for the entire nation to go and worship Yahweh there. So we know this page is nonsense. The sending of Harut and Marut is also nonsense. And we know that Allah is continually condemning generation after generation of Jews. Not Solomon though. And the reason why this is important now, because if you think about it like this, there's only been 6 or 7 generations of Jews so far described in this book. Since the first time they were spotted in Egypt and made slaves, Allah has condemned and cursed every single generation of Jews, despite not doing it to Solomon. And Muslims are supposed to learn from this that every concurrent generation of Jews will be accursed to Allah, and this grievous penalty will still apply to them, whereby Muslims need to go and kill them and destroy Israel, take their daughters as sex slaves and kill everybody else, and proclaim this victory for Allah. That is the jihad that we are seeing today in Israel. So that's why they come out with these false allegations, this false narrative that Israel are really evil and they're only interested in killing elderly people and kids. No, that's all they're interested in. They're not interested in defending their borders, getting their hostages back, or killing a threatening army. No. According to Allah, they're killing old people, they're killing babies, and they're just doing it because they're evil Jews. And the way that they can make this okay in their heads and not feel guilty is because Allah himself has demonstrated how every single concurrent generation, including Moses' first generation of Jews, are evil, The reason they are evil is because they won't submit to Allah, they don't surrender to Islam, and they have total adherence to Mosaic law and faith in Yahweh, and even death cannot stop them from doing that. And Allah is crazy pissed off about this because his Muslims aren't that devoted. He has to enslave them or they wouldn't be there at all. And that is the end of this video. So, hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. God bless you all, and I'll see you lovely people in the next one. Bye now. I had a lot of fun making this one, so hope you enjoyed that. Catch up with me same time again tomorrow for more Without Lies, Islam Dies, more inane, foamy mouth ramblings of Allah. Until then, I'm going to bid you a good night. God bless, have a lovely evening, and I'll see you, beautiful people, in the next one. Bye now. Bye bye bye.